Hello everyone, welcome to my next video. This one is going to be on outline cutouts, and to kind of explain a little bit about kind of why I'm going to be approaching the images in the way that I'm doing. I'm going to show you this photographer or graphic artist actually called Nacho Ormachea. I'm a big fan of his work and discovered this technique through looking at what he did. I stumbled across his work one day and just on one of those art blogs online a couple of years ago. And it's also been a big hit with students as well. The main reason is because you're literally getting like visual metaphors right before your eyes. You can see a person kind of in one particular pose, but then by combining two images, you can see the inner workings of their mind, either through what they're remembering, what they maybe dreamt about, or kind of like what they're feeling. So I've had a lot of students say, like, you know, they've come up with lots of different ideas as to kind of like why these images were picked and what they maybe represent. But really, it's kind of like your own sort of personal interpretation. I like to think images like this, where the person is reading and kind of generally in a nice restaurant, coffee bar, whatever, they've got images like this nice kind of sunset behind them. It's quite peaceful. It's quite calm. Quite happy, whereas images like this, the complete opposite really. Someone probably like working or talking to someone on the phone, and whatever it is that they're doing, they're feeling quite restricted, and the rope is quite a clear visual metaphor to kind of how they're feeling. Now, I've decided to do this with my own photos because, you know, I can't take images off Google because of copyright infringement. I feel like, you know, I've already made it very clear that this is the photographer and the graphic artist that can take all the credit for all these photos that we've seen here, as well as the websites that you can see that you know, this is colossal.com, for instance, that have had permission to kind of like host that person's photos. So I'm going to have to use my own, but I'm quite glad about that, despite the fact that sipping through Facebook, this is quite literally the best one that I could find, quiff and all, as you can see. But I thought for the mood of the photo, you know, a nice kind of jovial image, it would go well with kind of like a cutout that looked like that. It looked like this, sorry. I go back to the image of a sunset. This is actually something that was photographed on my last ever day in Melbourne, Australia, back in 2013. I did spend a little bit of time here when I was traveling the world, as well as Fiji, which is another image that we're going to be using today. So I kind of like tried to look back at images that I thought might be nice, happy memories that would be in keeping with this sort of image. So without further ado, let's get started. And what I want to just say prior to moving the images, we need to be aware of the fact that all of these images are made up of kind of these small squares here called pixels, okay? You might have heard the term megapixel, which means like 1,000 pixels. With regards to cameras, and that's how many their image sensors can capture. And it's very important that when you put one photo on top of another, like we're about to do now, you can see that the images are very different sizes. So this, as you can see, is a lot bigger than the image that I'm about to use, despite the fact that it's going to be the background. We can tell what the image size is by either right-clicking and looking on its properties in the kind of the folders that we get them from, or alternatively, we can go to image canvas size, and we can then convert this to pixels, and we can just have a much better look, okay? But I already know that this one is a lot smaller than the other one. So you might ask why I might not be copying and pasting this onto this. Well, the fact is, if you stretch any photo, it is going to reduce quality. Now, as much as it looks a bit shoddy there, I can press enter, and it will get a little bit of quality back, but it's going to be further pixelated upon zooming in, and we don't want to have that, so we're not going to do that. Right, so instead we're going to be getting all of this photographed. We can do that in a number of ways. We can either grab it using this rectangle selector, this marquee selection tool, or alternatively we can go to select all, or press Control and A as a bit of a keyboard shortcut. We can then copy the image over by going to the edit menu and going to copy. Just like any other program on Windows, you can go to Control and C to do that as well. And when you are on the correct tab, a shortcut for changing tabs, incidentally, is Control and Tab. Kind of no prizes for a name originality there. and then we can go to edit and we can go to paste or Control and V. So now that this is in, you can see that it is way bigger than the image that is underneath. And that is a bit of a problem, but it's a problem that is easily fixed. We're going to go to our move tool here and we're going to ensure that our transform controls are on. I can move this image around now, and I can also make it bigger and smaller by clicking in the corners. What can be a problem if you just click in the corners without much thought is you can potentially drag it in so that it is like stretched in the wrong way. So we're not going to do that. We are going to stretch it and hold down Shift at the same time. Shift is the arrow that is above Control that is used for your capital letters without pressing caps lock. I'm zooming out using Control plus and using Control minus. If I want to fill the screen, I will press Control and 0. Okay, some nice little shortcuts that are worth remembering that are going to be down in my instructions on the website. So if I now were to drag this out, I'm going to just be able to just plonk it roughly where the person is. It's not important exactly where this is now. However, if you did want to be fully exact, you could just go to opacity over here and you could turn it down a little bit just so you could just see roughly what you're dealing with. And I think I want the sunset about there, so that's fine. When you are happy with that you have got things where you want it, you need to press enter on your keyboard, that big square button that is used for the new paragraphs on Word. So once I've pressed enter, I'm now good to go with kind of moving these layers around. Or so I thought. If I turn this off and I want to actually get my background layer on top, which is what I want to do, it is going to prevent me from doing that. This is because this has a padlock on it. This is actually not a layer. This is a background. It has different properties to it in that you cannot move it around. You cannot transform it. You also cannot delete it without having to create a fill background layer as well. So what we're going to do is we are going to duplicate that layer. We right click on that to duplicate it, press OK. And as you can see, I now have something that I can change the order with, okay? Which means that I no longer have a need for that. I can either press delete on my keyboard or I can go to right click and delete layer, okay? Yes, I want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this back on. And to check that this is going to be on top, I'm going to drag this. And we should no longer be able to see the background. That is great. Okay, that's exactly what I want. I'm going to have to select this image now, and I can obviously use my selection tools that I was using previously. Now, you can't just cut out, you can't just draw around the photo and kind of like using a normal rubbish lasso, hit delete on the keyboard and just have that coming through. It's going to be slightly more technical than that. Instead, we are going to be using the quick select for the majority of it. And then we're going to work into our quick select by using a lasso tool and holding down either Alt or Shift on the keyboard. The quick select tool is all well and good and enables you to get the majority of what you want in 9 times out of 10. However, as you can see, there are little bits missing, particularly if we go to Refine Edge, we can see that our selection is a little bit kind of naff, really. So we can either go to the minus thing there, or we can go to our magnet lasso, and we can start to use the Alt key. If I hold down Alt, you will see this little minus appear, and I can start to get rid of things. What's good about this is I can be a little bit more specific. I can be clicking as well as kind of just moving around the edges of what I want. So I've decided that I don't want any of this kind of glass whatsoever. So blah, blah, blah. Let's assume I've done the best selection in the world and it's looking absolutely perfect. Go back to the original point, and there we go. This is purely just an example of the techniques that I would do. If I want this watching, which I actually don't, I would hold down Shift on the keyboard and I would proceed to select it with that. Now this is going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of work for this particular image. Now, maybe you might have an image that you can do entirely with quick select, and that's fine. However, I am going to just go for a selection that I made earlier. Now, how I did that is I went to select and save selection so I could get it back at a later date. I then typed in whatever I wanted, hit OK, and that was fine. Okay. However, I'm actually going to be loading my selection now, so I can go back to what I had before. Load selection, and it should be saved as me. hit OK. And there we go. As you can see, if I refine my edge, I have decided to leave the glass out. I've decided to leave the watch out. I've decided to leave the edge of the pan there as well. And my hand does stop where the glass hits there as well. I was able to use the radius a little bit to get the hair a little bit better as well. Not that that hair could really be saved by any means. But yeah, there we go. So that's the selection that I had. And there we go. Now there's one of two things that you can do here. You can either just hit delete on the keyboard, assuming that you are on the top layer. That's very, very important. And you are left with an image like that. This is what I had on my preview. Obviously it's deselected since then. However, I'm going to maybe show you something slightly different. I think that this is, you know, the overall just clear on its own is fine, and in 9 times out of 10 cases I would use that because it does look a little bit more of like a graphic sort of cutout, almost like you've done a physical collage. But I like to sometimes use the eraser tool, which can be found here, or by pressing E on the keyboard. I can make my eraser a lot bigger or a lot smaller, depending on what my preferences are. You can, if you want to kind of just use the keyboard to make this bigger and smaller so you can see it a lot more visually, you can use the straight brackets that are next to the letter P on your keyboard in 9 times out of 10 keyboards. So if I start to delete this, as you can see, it's deleting all of it. We don't necessarily want that, so I need to turn down the opacity, just like I turned down the opacity of the layer. You might have heard the term opacity back when you were in science class, and you may have heard the word transparent, translucent, or opaque. Now, if I was to turn this down to just 1, it is going to be pretty much transparent. There's going to be very little effect and very little point in me doing that. If I turn it up to around 50%, it's going to be translucent, in that I'm going to be just deleting a little bit of this with a little bit of the background layer coming through. Or if I select 100%, it is going to be utterly opaque, what I am going to get rid of. Okay, so let us maybe start with 100, kind of near the top. In fact, let's look at Ormachea's work again. See what he kind of does. He seems to have the person's head completely blocked out, but then the lower features are kind of being kept. Yeah, there we go. And it's quite selective by the looks of things as well. So for personal preference, what I may do is I may keep the hands in, but I may delete most of the head and the kind of the body. Now, I deliberately chose an eraser that kind of faded out a little bit as well, which was quite useful. So let's turn this down to maybe around 75%. And then let's turn it down to, I don't know, 40 odd percent, something like that. And then let's turn it down to 19%, 20%, something like that. And there you go. If I now was to go to select and deselect, or Control D, I'm now left with an image that represents Ormachea's work a little bit more. Now, what is good about keeping this background layer underneath, if we were to get rid of this top layer, it is still completely intact, and we are free to move it around. We are free to transform it and do what we want. If anything, having the background, the top layer on, I know it's called background copy, which is a little bit confusing. But yeah, we can actually still move this around within the outline. We can make it bigger and smaller. And what's good is it still has that faded effect because I use the eraser on the top layer. I am relatively happy with the way that this looks. I'm maybe going to keep this about there. Yeah, that looks good to me. Actually, nah, the way it was fine. But that's the beauty of it. You can actually like play around and see like the alternatives. And speaking of alternatives, we can use this image from Fiji before. We can Control C, Control Tab a couple of times, and Control V it, making sure that it is between these two layers. and I can just see what that looks like as well. Now it's not bad. It could be a little bit better because, as you can see, I was wearing a bit of a red kind of maroon shirt, and this is a blue image, and therefore it's not going to look good with the level of opacity that I had before. What I may do instead, if I did want this image, I might just do the 100% opacity on the eraser tool, and I may want to get rid of things like the hands and things like that. Furthermore, what I could do is as well, if I go to my top layer, I could make this black and white, and that will stand out a little bit more, and we don't have the problem of the red coming through. But on the whole, I must say that I like the other version better. I feel like this image was a lot kind of calmer, and like I was going on holiday to a more relaxing place. I also don't like the fact that it is a lot more pixelated than the other image that I chose. But I like the fact that this image, going back to my original meaning and purpose, was a lot more of like a happier memory. Goodness me, I know that was quite the happy memory going to that island. But happy in the sense that there was like a feeling of accomplishment. Like, I think I remember turning up to Melbourne, Australia with, I think, £300 of my overdraft left. I was going to be begging people for money left, right and centre to get the first ticket home. I ended up sticking it out, going to knocking on the door of every single bar in Australia, pretty much, Melbourne rather, and until someone finally gave me a job. And in the end, I ended up staying there for 6 months and having a great time. So it was a great feeling of accomplishment. When this photo was taken, it was a birthday, but it was also it was just I think it was after a set of exam results as well. I think that some students of mine had done quite well, and I was not just celebrating a birthday, but celebrating kind of like what I'd achieved as well. So the two images' meanings kind of tie into each other a little bit, which is great. Okay. That's all for now. I would maybe kind of expand on this in future videos by showing you perhaps like how to do this cutout selection with layer masks and things like that. But I think as kind of a basic introduction to it, I think that was sufficient. If you do, however, have any questions, as per usual, just answer them in the comments section. Feel free to subscribe. There's going to be lots more videos like this, including the next one, which is going to be about blending options and outline cutouts, which is slightly different. So I'll definitely keep an eye on that. Okay, thanks very much for your time, guys. Have a great day. Cheers. Bye-bye.